what concerns me significantly about the direction that this is going is saying that now, previously, the 2004 form was wrong because it was just about a score and it was just about flavor. Now, what we need is everybody has to be centered around the CBA form, which is the form that now all the industry needs to use. That's this long, bulky 4-part form that I just don't see how high volume quality control labs at producing countries are going to function in that role. I don't understand how communication is going to go across the supply chain. It's just not how coffee is traded and what I believe the direction of where we're going of how coffee is going to be traded. And I've talked with importers, exporters, producers from many different countries, and I just don't see that the evolution of the queue that was needed, that the answer is everything being centered around the CBA.
The Introduction to Regenerative Coffee Farming workshops are now available on demand in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. For coffee producers, the workshop is available for just $10, and for everyone else, it's $20. Led by our incredible professors, the workshop is packed with practical knowledge and strategies to help coffee farmers and the entire coffee industry adapt to the challenges of climate change, rising costs, and market demands. If you're a business owner, this workshop is a great and affordable way to inform your employees about the challenges ahead while also supporting Mapper Forward. Head to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the description to purchase the on-demand version and start your journey towards a more sustainable coffee future today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 2 of a 5-part series with Tim Heinze, the Director of Education at the SCI, the Sustainable Coffee Institute. You know the SCA, you know the CQI, and now I suspect you're going to get to hear a lot more about the SCI. And the reason is because there was an announcement, as we spoke about in the last episode, about the Q form, and the Q program is being sold to, or has been sold, or whatever the particulars are, to the SCA. There's some context that I want to fill in here from the last episode. First of all, Michael Sheridan has agreed to come on the podcast, and he will be coming on and having a conversation with me. I have on social media made an open invitation to somebody from the SCA, but I am going to invite Yanis specifically to come on the podcast and have this conversation. I'm not sure if he's going to accept the invitation, but if he does, I would love to have that discussion with him. As I said, I don't have a horse in this race, folks. Like, the problems that I'm trying to help solve in this industry are not related to any of this stuff. I think that we have much, much, much bigger problems in this industry. And this whole thing that happened at SCA pissed me off because, of course, it detracted from what we should have all been talking about at SCA for those who were there, which is what is happening with regards to trade, what is happening with regards to climate, yield of coffee, tariffs, all of that kind of stuff. All of it was derailed because of this. And anybody who thinks that this wasn't planned, take a look at the marketing material. This whole thing has been carefully constructed, in my opinion. Some other context that I wanted to give you, that Tim was being far too humble in the last episode. He did not give you enough context about what he has done, okay? And that doesn't surprise me about Tim. But so that you understand what Tim's role is in the industry, Tim has been in the industry for a long time. And during that time, he has done coffee in different countries, lots of different countries. And he teaches all over the world. He has students. He regularly comes to the Middle East and teaches people here in the Middle East. He does it in Asia. He does it all over the world. So when Tim tells you that, you know, it's about 20% of his revenue, he has done this for a long time in many different countries all over the world. He's a much beloved member of the Q community. He can't say that. He won't say that. But I can say that because I have been told that from a lot of people. You're welcome. But people need that context to understand, like, why is he a part of this conversation? Well, because for a really long time at those dinners that we were referring to when Tim comes here and we have those conversations, I'm sitting there saying, bro, why the fuck aren't you doing something about this stuff that you're complaining about? Right? I'm always encouraging
There.
people that I think, isn't that what I tell me I'm not
That's
saying
fair.
that to you over a plate of hummus.
That
Right?
is
Like
true.
I'm constantly trying to tell the people that I think should be leaders to step the fuck up. And many times I have said that to Tim. And now the opportunity presented itself. And so he's texting me while he's in Jakarta. One of the first things I said to him, well, what have I been telling you? Here you go. The universe has provided you with the opportunity. It's time to either step up or not. And I was very clear to him before he came on the podcast. If you're not going to actually say the shit that needs to be said, you're not coming on. Did I say that or not?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. In fact, that might actually be a direct quote from the message that was sent. So
If anyone breaks into our WhatsApp messages, you'll be able to see it. So, Tim, we are in this episode talking about, does the queue need evolving? A lot of people seem to be very offended by this term, the evolved queue. Why were they offended by this term, the evolved queue?
Yeah. So a lot of the messaging and a lot of the marketing material around this announcement was coffee is more than a score, that the previous Q Grader program, was just about flavor, the evolving the Q. And why myself and many others that I know were very offended by this was that as educators teaching this quality evaluation program, none of us have the opinion or even the idea that coffee is just about a score. And what I think is being confused or conflicted or conflated, whatever the term is that scoring a coffee, that giving it coffee a score somehow demeans or undermines or detracts from, diminishes the other aspects of the coffee. And that's not the reality that any of us educators in this program, nor do I believe what Q graders globally feel about using a form, using a tool to understand the quality of coffee. When I think about, yes, has our industry changed in 20 years that the Q Grader program has been around? Absolutely. Absolutely, it's changed. And it's gone through multiple changes. And I mean, we're seeing changes right now that are before us. And my mention previously about the quality evaluation program and about CQI educational programs in general not innovating and improving and changing and adjusting over the years, the question of does the Q program need evolving? I think every educational program needs to continue to innovate, and I hate the word evolve, but to adjust and to adapt and to go through changes that reflect where the industry is. But the insinuation that what the Q Grader program was or is up until October 1st is just about the flavor of the coffee and a score that's given is asinine. And it's offensive because it's not. And I've never stood before a course, a group of learners and diminished the work and the sweat and the tears of a producer and processor to just a score. Ever. And I haven't taken a CVA class, and I think that's important to mention. That I have
Neither
talked
have
with
I.
many.
Neither will
I've
I.
talked with many people. I've talked with many people who are teaching that program, who have gone through that. Individuals that I respect and I admire, but I've never taken a CVA course. I've looked at the form. I've asked a bunch of questions about it. I've talked with producers and importers and exporters and roasters about what their thoughts are on it, but I've never taken the course. And I acknowledge that there are useful tools in our industry that allow individuals, wherever they are in the supply chain, to capture information and make decisions. And is the CVA form a tool that can be used to do that? Sure. Of course it can be in certain contexts, in certain places. 100%. I've heard people say on the consuming side of the industry, roasters say, oh, this has been great to help us better understand consumer preferences and some of that information. Great, fantastic. But the idea that the educational programs that have been shared across the world, that producers in many countries around the world have begun learning and begin understanding, that it needed a wholesale change and evolution, to me, it is not a positive direction and is not something that is beneficial to our industry. As a very, very discrete, concrete not discrete, but a very concrete example, I was hired several months back by one of the leading NGOs in our industry working in the coffee space, TechnoServe. I think they do some amazing work, to go to Ethiopia, to go to one of their quality control labs and to train. There's going to be roughly 25 to 30 different individuals in a kind of a sensory, working in a quality control role, including aspects of cupping, sample roasting, data analysis, management, lot blending, lots of those activities and skills that are critical to quality control roles at origin in producing countries. And one of the, like, as soon as I heard this announcement, one of the first things in mind was, oh shit, what do I, like, what should I teach? Because and in talking with TechnoServe, the trainings and such that they've been doing have all been focused around helping and encouraging people to use the 2004 SCA form to evaluate coffees, because that's how coffees are being traded. That's how coffees and communications with importers and exporters and roasters are going. So what do I do? What and it was some really, really great, I had a really great conversation in my head, which I do quite a lot, and had, a good debate with myself about what to do. But it was this question of, and I had to ask myself very, okay, to respect the time that these individuals are giving, do I try to figure out some way to teach the CVA? And I couldn't convince myself to do it because I didn't see the value for those individuals in that position as they continue to engage with the supply chain, with trading coffee, with trying to sell coffee. And then you're like, okay, but do you teach them a 2004 form, which then is, if I mean, SCA has been very, very, very active in saying that they are no longer supporting that the standards that are being written, that they've retired that form. Everything will be focused on CVA. All of their initiatives, all of their educational programs will be focused around the CVA. Now, just to finish up that example, when I started building this training program for TechnoServe, I focused on developing sensory skills, how we evaluate, how we articulate, how we describe. And so I'm not tied to a form, but we are going to evaluate coffees. And I do want to provide some opportunity to discuss how we understand those different qualities. And the question of, should the queue evolve? The queue the quality evaluation program should continue to adapt and innovate to where our industry is and where it's going, as we begin to assess what's in the cup, as we begin to assess the quality of coffee. But my concern with introducing wholesale, now we're CVA focused, is the thousands upon thousands of producers that aren't current Q graders, that are working in quality control labs, that have spent significant amount of time and resources learning a method and a way of evaluating and articulating quality. The rules are now changed. And now they're in a position, again, where they have to go to somebody on the consuming side of the industry who's had the resources, who's had the access to learn this new form, to understand, okay, well, tell me, what is quality now? What is the value of my coffee? And yes, I acknowledge that. What did the CQI program create a global panel of 10,000 Q graders that all objectively evaluated coffee the exact same way? No, it didn't. And there was a subtle kind of change that CQI made going back a couple years, where they started adjusting the terminology from calibration to alignment, which I really wish they would have just done it and like actually come out and said, we acknowledge that the term calibration really isn't the right term, and we're going to start using the term alignment for these reasons. I wish they would have just come out and said it instead of the subtle like vernacular change, because it is a critical change. There are certain, and the way that I've always taught in the courses that I've taught is that we have historical understanding for certain types of quality specs, certain types of coffees, as to how the industry as a whole evaluates and values these coffees. We have historical experience where we can have alignment that this is what the industry considers a high quality Kenyan washed coffee. This is what the industry considers a high quality Guatemalan washed coffee. But are we comfortable in the space of saying this funky, anaerobic, natural, blah, 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 blah? As an industry, do we agree on how to objectively qualify or objectively evaluate this coffee? No, we don't. And that's okay. That's why we need more conversations and more communications. I've always, every course I've taught, I've started with this discussion about the supply chain being linear when it needs to be circular, and the feedback loop that has to happen, the deluge of information that comes down the waterfall of the coffee supply chain, that embarrassingly information trickles back to the source, and we have to change that. And as a Q grader, as somebody, as a Q grader, as a post-harvest processing professional, as anybody who's taken a training course that I've given, you are now bestowed with the responsibility to send that information back across the supply chain and back to the source. And that's something that I have just been passionate about in any course that I teach, because yes, there are things about the Q program that need to improve, but the position that the evolution that the Q needed is to now focus on the CVA and to be entirely centered around an evaluation or centered in the CVA form, to me is not what the industry needed. And what the industry needs, is it a tool that can be used to make certain decisions that can support people in certain positions of the industry? Yes, of course it can, as any sensory tool, as any form can provide. The COE has had a form for a long time that's given them the tools they need to perform their jobs or to perform their assessments. And I am the fact that what concerns me significantly about the direction that this is going is saying that now, previously, the 2004 form was wrong because it was just about a score and it was just about flavor. Now what we need is everybody has to be centered around the CVA form, which is the form that now all the industry needs to use. That's this long, bulky 4-part form that I just don't see how high volume quality control labs at producing countries are going to function in that role. I don't understand how communication is going to go across the supply chain. It's just not how coffee is traded and what I believe the direction of where we're going of how coffee is going to be traded. And I've talked with importers, exporters, producers from many different countries, and I just don't see that the evolution of the queue that was needed, that the answer is everything being centered around the CBA.
Well, and so one thing that I want to make sure that people understand is, as you're mentioning this 4-part form, right? Anyone who thinks that this is not about collecting data is out of their minds.
Well, you can log on to Cropster or Tasteify or any of the other cupping apps that people are using, and automatically there's an alert that says, if you want your information when you evaluate with a CVA form that we have on our system, if you want that information to go to SCA, please click through and approve the transfer of this information to the SCA. So it's absolutely about collecting data.
And I want people to think about something. I'd love to explore this with you, Tim. Our industry is undergoing tectonic level shifting with the acceleration of a number of things. 1, climate change. 2, technology. 3, geopolitical and economic changes. The workforce for our industry across the entire supply chain is going to change. The varietals that we use that will be able to weather the climate events that we're having are all going to change over time. We do not know. The biggest conversation I'm having with producers as we prepare for the biochar workshop is, Lee, we have no idea how we're going to be able to grow the coffee that's needed to keep up with demand. These are the fucking problems that I want the SCA to be focusing on. We don't have enough coffee, and we're not going to have enough coffee for a few years. Then we will have coffee again for a minute, if everything goes well, and then we are going to have devastating level effects of no coffee. All of these things are going to change the way we all do everything. Most cafes won't need baristas. You getting qualified in a CVA or as a Q grader, the part of it that has been confusing to me for all of this time over the last few years is the writing's on the wall. We're not going to need that many qualified sensory experts. Technology is going to take care of it. We have less and less coffee that's being produced. Who are the farmers that are going to need to get qualified in the CVA? Farmers right now are saying to me, are these people serious? These people who are trying to get us to agree to do a CVA, are they serious? Do they actually understand the realities of farming, or are they just talking to farmers in Panama? Like 1 + 1 = fish. Like every fucking series, the last 5 series, we come back to 1 + 1 = fish. It's just, given that more than 80% of the coffee that's grown in the world is going into the commercial market these days, who are we doing these programs for? I'm confused. And producers who are trying to figure out how we don't sound like entitled assholes on the other end of the supply chain, trying to force this thing upon them, are trying to understand what the objective is. I don't understand it. They don't understand it. And they're watching on as the industry goes to this huge expo that is supposed to be about trade. Because the SCA is a registered nonprofit that is a trade organization. And they watch the entire conversation get hijacked by a form that's most likely going to become obsolete. But in the process, until it becomes obsolete, they're going to collect as much data as they can. They're going to, in my opinion, they're going to tell you that they're doing this so that they can know which origins should be selling to what consuming countries. And in the process, in my opinion, they're going to sell that data to the highest bidder.
Yes.
And they're going to use that data to create apps, most likely, to create apps and websites and tools and all of this kind of stuff. Because one part of the CVA is that you write down all of your things, and then there's an algorithm, like an equation, that has to do the calculation for you to tell you like what the answer is. What producer has the time? It doesn't. So was the thing broken? My 2 cents on it is like, does the thing need evolving? I will bring it back to the one thing that every producer tells me. Lee, I don't want my coffee brought down to a number. I don't want you to assess, you being us who buy coffee and roast coffee and all of that. I don't want you to come to my farm, cup my coffee, and then grade me as though I'm like cattle being sold at an auction with a score. You disrespect the work that we've put into doing this. You disrespect the fact that without us, you don't have an industry. And we just proved them right. We just proved through this thing that just happened, we proved that we are not bringing the farmer into the conversation. We are telling the farmer that the conversation should be about this CVA. When in fact, the farmer right now is shitting their pants trying to figure out how they're going to make enough income to keep their farm alive. How utterly indignant of us on the consuming end of the industry to hijack that conversation in a year like 2025 and make it about us again. We should be ashamed of ourselves, in my opinion. We could have done this in such a better way. We could have sat down with producers, not just the producers in Panama, not just the high-end producers who do all the micro lots. We could have sat down with people and said, listen, we've got a problem that needs to be solved. And I have no idea the way that the SCA went about this, but I will tell you something. For an industry that cocks on so much about transparency, shame on us. I didn't see fucking any of it from the SCA. This really does feel like we're at one of our dinners, team. We're just missing the Arabic food.
That's right.
We do have some damn good dinners, though.
We do. We really do.
But this is really like what one of our conversations is like at dinner, folks. And we often say we should have recorded this as a podcast. But like, the thing I wanted to say is like, the system's broken. It worked for the people who were running businesses off it. Like and this is the big complaint, right? Like, people are up in arms about the fact that their business models have been broken and their revenue streams have been taken away, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. And I really empathize with any business owner in 2025 and in any year. But 2025 is a year that we were warning there's going to be a lot of disruption. This is a part of that disruption. And yet again, we don't focus on the businesses that enable us to actually be an industry. So anyway, I won't put you in a position to share your opinion on any of that. Go ahead.
No, I totally hear what you're saying, and I think that it's, you know, the conversations, some of the conversations that happened at Expo in kind of the group sessions, there were a few of our instructors that were producers that stood up and shared how costly the process is to become an instructor, how difficult the courses are to access, how and they're 100% right. And I know, you know, SCA made an announcement, they're going to make an official announcement, I think it World Coffee Jakarta, but you know, they're going to be reflecting the cost of the courses, or at least what SCA charges for the cost of their courses, based off the purchasing power parity structure from the IMF, and not
on the IMF, yeah.
And you know, Michael shared like, oh, you know, that's I'm really, I think his words were like, I'm jealous of that. I mean, we've been talking about, and I specifically have, I mean, and I got I got a message from 2 different people that are in East Africa working through the process of becoming instructors, and they're like, I'm having a really hard time, you know, finding different courses that I can assist in and working through this process. And we've raised this issue, but I think that the connect that, okay, the access to it is difficult, so the answer is a CVA course for $15. That's there's a massive amount of disconnect between those 2 issues.
The tone deafness of all of it is
is
out
is
of
unreal.
this world ridiculous.
It's unreal.
Well, and the suggestion that the cost of this, the cost is the big problem here, is so surreal to me. As though coffee producers, first of all, have the time to figure out, to take out of producing coffee, to go and learn this CVA, or that they would rather be spending their time doing this and it's forced upon them, rather than learning how to actually make their soil healthier. You think a farmer in Ethiopia who's trying to figure out how to feed his 11 children gives any fucks about your CVA? And this is something I've consistently been saying since after World of Coffee in 2024. Anyway, next episode. What are the issues with the 2004? Clearly, we're not heated at all here at Map It Forward. What are the issues with the 2004 cupping form? 2004 cupping form. Join us for that, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.